guys have Minnesota sports flowing in their veins. Mackey and Judd on Score North and ScoreNorth.com.
It seems like every week is a heck of a defensive challenge for our offense with just the different types of special players at different levels of defenses we've seen lately. And I think our guys are, understand the challenge again this week is a heck of a task with this defense and the way they're coached and what Robert does with this team. It's been impressive to see how hard they play. They're fundamentally sound, technique sound, and they've got some really good players on both sides of the ball, really. So a heck of a challenge for us.
Technique sound.
Football.
Yes. Love it. You know who's technically sound in his job? Darren Doogie Wolfson from the 5 Eyewitness News sports team. He brings inside information about your favorite Minnesota sports teams on Reckless Speculation Thursday every single week. And bonus scoops on Tuesdays, the Scoop podcast as well. Doogie, what's going on, man? Well, let's start Vikings here. Christian Darrisaw still in concussion protocol. We can get to that, but how are you on this Reckless Speculation Thursday?
I'm doing okay, Phil. Happy December 1st. We've made it to December, but more importantly, happy Reckless Speculation Thursday.
Yes, let's
That's all
get
that
it.
matters.
LFG, boys.
Reckless Speculation.
So we kind of thought Darrisaw, the back-to-back weeks with concussions, probably not going to see him for a while. And Kevin O'Connell, it sounds like, did confirm that he is still in the concussion protocol. So do you have any sort of feel for, I don't think he should come back a day sooner than, feeling 110% just because of the long-term ramifications. He might be your 10-year franchise left tackle, but let's start there and other places along the Vikings injury report, Dukes.
Well, sure. On Darrisaw, yeah. Don't expect to see him on Sunday against the Jets. Now, I wouldn't necessarily at this point rule out December 11th against the Lions. But, yeah, like a second concussion over the course of 2 weeks, you're not going to be able to clear all the protocols and return this soon. Not to mention the conditioning part. Like, shameless plug, I was catching up with my buddy Mike Gensel, Arizona Coyotes scout. Judd, I'm sure you see him in the XL Energy Center press box all the time. You too, Declan. So his son Jake, really good player for the Pittsburgh Penguins, had a concussion earlier this season. Mike told me Jake came back too soon. He was cleared in terms of his brain being okay, but he was far behind conditioning-wise. So you think about it, Christian Darrisaw really hasn't done anything conditioning-wise for 11, 12 days, really going back to that Thursday or Friday entering the Dallas game. So he's just not, from a conditioning standpoint, in a position to be playing anytime soon if he somehow passed, the fifth stage of protocol. But yeah, he's not playing on Sunday. Let's wait and see where he is next week. This is not some sort of season-ending injury. I certainly foresee him being back at some point this year. So you're right, Phil. I mean, as good a left tackle as there is in the game. So the Vikings need him with their aspirations of making a deep run in January all the way to February in Glendale. Dalvin Tomlinson back Sunday. Caleb Evans back Sunday. Cam Dantzler Sr. says he'll be back for the Detroit game on December 11th. I still want to wait and see on that one. Like, he's going to be back. It's not a season-ending injury, but I need to hear a little bit more information that he'll be in a position to play a week from Sunday as opposed to maybe 2 weeks from Sunday against the Colts.
Hey, Dukes, on Tomlinson, he's going to have missed about a month. That seems to me, now their bodies are different, but they're both big men. That seems to me to be a pretty good parallel for Cat because it's two big guys with calf problems. I read that Tomlinson's description of what happened to him sounds probably very close to what occurred with Cat on Monday against Washington. So all of that being said, it seems that you could draw a pretty close parallel, time missed to how much time Tomlinson will miss before he comes back against the Jets and what Cat's timetable might be. Does that sound right to you?
It does sound about right. Like, both more severe than a grade 1. Like, Jordan McLaughlin has been battling a grade 1. That is a 7 to 10 day recovery. Jordan plans on playing on Saturday against OKC, but he has missed 5 games. So grade 2 is more like a 4 to 6 to 7-ish week type recovery. On Cat, like, we won't see him for sure before Christmas, likely before January 1st. I mean, they will reevaluate in about 4 weeks around Christmas, then go from there. On Tomlinson, I will tell you, Judd, like I've said this before, I'll reiterate it now. They did think there was hope that he would be back for the Dallas game. Remember, like if they didn't think he'd be back for the Dallas game in the short week with the New England game, they would have made an IR move, right? Like if you're going to miss 4 games, go ahead and make the IR move. So they did think from the get-go, but yeah, big man, calf strain, like it's just a recipe for many, many weeks, right? Even if you're not running a ton like Tomlinson, just with his girth, his size, you just don't come back quickly from a grade 2 calf strain.
Do you think Kevin O'Connell's going to win Coach of the Year, Doogie?
Ooh, I think he's going to get heavy consideration. You know, as I go through the possibilities, I mean, heck, the guy in Philly is going to get all sorts of love. I mean, Andy Reid, I mean, all they do is win. I don't think Andy is going to get it, but certainly Andy deserves love in Kansas City. I mean, how do the Jets finish? I mean, considering the Jets haven't been to the playoffs in a decade plus, right? If the Jets somehow get in, you know, could Robert get some consideration? You know, what about McDaniel with the Dolphins navigating the quarterback situation? They have a chance to win the AFC East. So I would think if they somehow win the AFC East, if Buffalo doesn't win that division, then Mike McDaniel would certainly have a chance. But yeah, I mean, he's in that conversation, right? I mean, undoubtedly, Phil, like if we're having a Coach of the Year conversation, Kevin O'Connell has to be mentioned.
Speaking of that too, and just a shameless plug, of course, I wrote about this for VikingsWire.com yesterday, Justin Jefferson's MVP candidacy. Now, the award's been around since 1957. A wide receiver, as we've discussed, has never won it. The voting has been changed. It used to be 50 guys vote, and as far as that goes, it's one name per ballot. They've changed it to a top 5, so it's more akin to what baseball does now. But I really think when you look at what Tyreek Hill and Jefferson in particular are doing, to dismiss them because it's become a quarterback award is ridiculous. I mean, wide receiver, the position itself has never been as important as it's become. And when you look at the impact that Hill and Jefferson in particular have had directly on their teams, and their quarterbacks are playing fine. But the point is, I think this is finally the year that if we don't see at least serious consideration for that position, they need to rethink the award itself and just call it a quarterback award.
Well, sure. Call it quarterback of the year. I mean,
right.
Hey, Patrick Mahomes is winning MVP, Judd, right? I mean, unless he falls flat on his face, suffers some sort of catastrophic injury, can't play the rest of the year, I think the Chiefs quarterback is going to win. But I'm with you. He needs to be in the conversation. Think about the big moments, right? Game in London against New Orleans. Great throw, but created enough separation against Lattimore. A big-time catch in the Washington game when they're down 10, that comeback. Then you think about the Buffalo catch, right? Even against the Patriots, it was a really good throw by Kirk, but remember that catch he had? I believe it was 26. You guys might have a better memory than I, but McCourty was coming in. The cornerback had good coverage. I thought it was a brilliant throw, but Jefferson still was able to be in a position to secure that catch to put the Vikings in a position to eventually score the go-ahead touchdown. So you think about those big moments, he absolutely needs to be in the mix.
Yeah. By the way, these scoops presented in part by our friends over at Lake Ridge Liquors. I want to throw a shout out to them real quick in Vadnais Heights, helping you all stock, hopefully, your liquor cabinet, Declan, and maybe your wine collection for the holidays.
Yeah, there's 1,000 wines in stock if you're a wino like Phil, or maybe you want to go to that 40-foot long wall of whiskey. It's a whiskey season for me right now. I do the tequila in the summer, then I go to whiskey in the wintertime. Great selections at Lake Ridge Liquors. It's off 694 and Rice Street in Vadnais Heights, and they have a rewards program too. So when you go there for the first time, mention Score North, and they will comp you $5 in rewards on your next visit. Nothing like a good reward system to at a liquor store with how frequent I like to go. So go check out Lake Ridge Liquors in Vadnais Heights off 694 and Rice Street.
And a shout out to our friends too at Federated Mutual Insurance Company. Federated's been helping us grow our business at Score North, and they provide a guiding hand and all sorts of experience in just helping business owners navigate the potentially choppy waters. Even when the waters are smooth, it's just a great guiding hand to help you maximize your business. Over 100 years of experience, and they are an official partner of the Minnesota Timberwolves, who we will talk about here shortly. Federatedinsurance.com, where it's our business to protect yours. One more Vikings thing here, and it's more of a I guess I'm just looking for any intel you have about the general culture. There's a lot of changes this year. on the field, X's and O's. Kirk Cousins has just performed so much better in high leverage moments, and we'll have more on that on Purple Daily today. But it just vibes is the word that I would use, Doogie. It just from the post game locker room speeches that we get access to, and just the ability to bounce back from interceptions offensively. What have you heard about just the overall vibe behind the scenes and the culture change dating back to January and how it has manifested with a 9-win season so far?
Well, I mean, Kirk Cousins spoke loudly after the New England game, then again on Wednesday in the locker room about how Kevin O'Connell has empowered him. And he said, hey, it's hard for me to articulate, but there are examples, whether team meeting room, quarterback meeting room, other instances on the practice field where Kirk feels empowered by his head coach. There's an ESPN.com feature story that just posted this morning, forget the author, but it's on Justin Jefferson, where in the story it notes that Justin Jefferson never once visited Mike Zimmer's office. Kevin O'Connell invited Justin to his office soon after accepting the head coach position. Kevin said, hey, I literally had to give him direction after direction because, anybody who's been over to TCO, it's a maze at times, right? It's not easy. Like if you're in the locker room to then go up to Kevin O'Connell's office, you need to navigate a few different hallways, some staircases. And so Justin had no idea how to get to Kevin O'Connell's office.
It's a left at the water fountain, and then you go down.
It is confusing as hell.
It is very confusing, but it's a cool building. But yes, it's a maze. But I will say, to defend Zim, I don't remember the exact COVID protocols, but if Justin wanted to go to Zim's office in 2020, could he? I don't remember everything with COVID, but nonetheless, the
security
fact that
guy
Justin Jefferson had never
I think they could have found a way. They could have found a way.
Just the fact that Justin Jefferson had never been to the head coach's office, that's just another example, Phil. And I don't want to turn this into a Mike Zimmer bashing session because I still firmly believe third best coach in Vikings history. He accomplished a lot here.
Fourth now.
Yeah. Well, yeah. Well, maybe we'll eventually have that conversation, right? But it's kumbaya in many ways. I mean, heck, I was talking with an agent the other day. He's got a client in that Vikings locker room. He's got clients in other locker rooms. He said, I hear from my other clients about just how crappy their situations are. Now, he admitted those teams are losing teams. It helps to be 9-2. But he said, my client there in Minnesota is having just a blast. So that's just another example of what you're speaking to.
Speaking of that, kumbaya. So, Dukes, I went to the Wolves game last night. It was dead to start with, but by the end, and with the fourth quarter put up by Ant, kumbaya is a very good word for a team that every other game I've been to in that building this year so far has not felt like a bunch of people who have come together to try to win basketball
Actually,
games.
real quick, because the three of us, Judd, Dex, myself, we're going to spend a huge chunk sort of diving into our thoughts on what happened. But since we have Doogs, can we just pose a reckless speculation question to what Judd's referring to? Let's just get right to the question.
All right, well, go ahead.
Would the Wolves be better without Karl-Anthony Towns? Let's just throw it out. That's the question, right?
Return. Now, remember, they can't. I said this a few weeks ago. They wouldn't trade him at the deadline if they could, but the rules stipulate that based on him signing his recent extension, they couldn't even trade him until next offseason. So they cannot trade him this season. So he's not going anywhere. But, Phil, tell me what the return is. Is it a bunch of first-round picks? Okay, the Knicks, I'm telling you, there would be a handful of teams that would have interest, but I can promise you the Knicks would be in that mix. So who are you getting from the Knicks? I need it laid out. Because I'm trying to avoid hyperbole based on one game. Last night was great. Ant was special. He had more driving lanes than maybe I thought. I still think Cat offers that for Ant, that even though Cat is a driver, not a three-point shooter, he's a threat out there, so defenders have to collapse on him. So in theory, the lane then opens up that much more for Ant, but he found lanes last night without Cat. But I still think Cat brings plenty of value to this team. But I need to know, Phil, who is coming back to the Wolves? Then I can answer your question.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, that's the thing. Like the Knicks would be a team, and I've even just seen like on Knicks NBA Twitter and stuff. I think they would love Karl-Anthony Towns. I don't know that that's the perfect collection of pieces that would. I'd have to do some more digging on that. Maybe at some point here, and then while Karl-Anthony Towns is out, if they keep playing this way, I will put together like 3 to 5 fun speculative trade packages for you guys. Maybe even next week. But I think it's really, there are certain players in NBA history, recent NBA history, and hell, the Timberwolves have had a couple of them, namely Kevin Love, DeMarcus Cousins over with the Kings. There are certain players in the NBA that can go get their incredible individual stats, and for some reason, it just like, whether it's the way they play or the energy or just like a lack of chemistry or they're not great leaders or whatever, it's like those stats don't mesh well enough into the fabric and the culture of the team. And it has felt oftentimes, not all the time, because I agree, he is their best player, but it's like the Bill Simmons Ewing theory. That is, he's just kind of on an island, and the collective isn't as good when he's out there. I mean, the way that they played with energy, and it's a 1-game sample, but everything just looked free and joyful last night.
It did, but it also looked that way with Cat 8 days ago in
Against
Indiana.
Yep, that's
now,
true.
22 games, we can only point to those two. I thought they were good for the most part in Philly, but Philly's comeback, like I can't call that a complete effort. There's 2 games out of 22 where we can say unreal effort, minute 1 to minute 48, last night and the Indiana game. So we have the 1-game sample size of last night without Cat, but we also have a 1-game sample size with Cat. Now, when you eventually concoct those trade scenarios, New York, Dallas, Toronto, possibly Chicago, and I'll maybe get you another team or two, but definitely concoct ideas, New York and Dallas.
So,
Speculation.
So, Dukes, it's 1 game, but I want to go down this path just a bit here, too, because we've all covered sports, and we've all covered teams, and we've all been around teams and players a lot, okay? I get it's 1 game, and I get that the sample size police will be upset about this, but you can feel when it's different. You can feel, and I'm talking about chemistry. I'm talking about when puzzles look like they fit and when they don't look like they fit. Sometimes that's one guy's fault. Sometimes in the case of Parisi and Suter, that's multiple people's fault. But what we saw, yeah, you know what? Exactly right. And then all the kids glom onto, well, this is how we do things. We're lazy. So the key last night to me was you could feel it worked. You could feel it fit. And when that game started and the Wolves were down 11 to 2 before a sparse crowd, Dukes, that building was dead and people were starting to boo and they're like typical BS Timberwolves. And then it started to raise a little bit and the chemistry started to come together because it's been missing so much. And so I don't think it's reckless speculation to say when you've been around sports as much as we have, you can feel when something is working and probably more importantly, when it's not. And so that's the thing I think we're going to run into here. And flat out, let's go back to a very key word, empowerment. When Ant is empowered, it makes a difference. You know why? Because he can take the ball, no pun intended, and run with the empowerment ball. Karl can't. He is 27. I think he's 8 years in. Ship has sailed. Can't do it. So I will say this. Sample size police. Trust Sports Dad here. Seen it before. We'll see it again. This is an important distinction of what we saw last night.
The best part about Ant last night wasn't the points to me. Well, he made all his free throws because he hasn't been a great free throw shooter. But how about the multiple blocked shots, the multiple steals, right? He was so active last night. The team as a whole generating 27 turnovers. On the negative, Rudy Gobert plays 26 minutes, had 1 rebound. Rudy Gobert wasn't much of a factor on offense either, although how cool was that pick and roll when it was 99-94, couple minutes to go, the game's still somewhat in balance, and, you know, Edwards throws it up to Gobert, and the one-hand slam, I thought that was a really cool play to make it 101-94. I will tell you, Judd, I thought long before last night, for this team to truly take a giant step forward, it has to become Ant's team. And, you know, there's different ways to define that. But, you know, a popular buzzword would be he needs to be the alpha, right? However you want to define that. but there doesn't need to be any mistake about who is the guy on the team, right? There is no mistaking that Luka is the guy in Dallas, right? Giannis is the guy in Milwaukee. There needs to be no doubt here, right? And hey, Drew Holiday, Chris Middleton, who's about to return for the Bucks, those are really good players. But there's no mistaking who the guy is in Milwaukee. I think that needs to be the case here, that eventually for this team to take a giant step forward, Ant has to be that guy.
Well, and that doesn't that make the next 6 to 8 weeks crucial? That this would be, I know he's only 21, but this would be the window.
Well, it is. I mean, we hear all the time about guys taking a massive leap year 2 to year 3. Wasn't last year Ja Morant's third year? Correct me if I'm wrong on that. And he took a giant step forward. There are other examples, but we hear that all the time. Chris Finch cited that to me in a conversation before training camp about, hey, not just Ant, but Jaden as well. Like, guys take typically, if they are to take a leap, it comes year 2 to year 3. Well, here we are, year 3 for Anthony Edwards.
Yeah. Last year was Ja's third year. This is his fourth year. Ja went
and I mean, there are examples of guys not taking that leap, but just with Ja being here last night, that one comes instantly to mind.
Yeah, he went from like 19 points a game to 27 and flirting with a scoring title. Ant so far this year in his third-year leap, quote-unquote, he's been better. His field goal percentage is up from 44 to 46. His scoring is up a little. It's like up 2 points a game. His rebounds are up a rebound a game. So there's been it hasn't been this huge leap yet, though. But if he plays like he did last night and he just has sort of free reign to control the offense at points and be the guy in the fourth quarter, you'll start to see more of like a 26 to 30 point scoring average than a 22 point scoring average. So.
Well, I mean, I hope we get to that point, but I need to see more. Last night was fantastic. They should be able to beat OKC even with, not quite that effort on Saturday. But you look at their schedule, not just the next 4 to 6 weeks, Phil, but for the rest of the season, 7th toughest schedule in the league. I mean, the time to stockpile wins was early in the season. For sure through those first 12 games, but even, games 13 to 20, but certainly those first 12. Like, you're going to look back and say, how did they lose to the Spurs twice? The Spurs right now have, an 8-game losing streak. They are who we thought they were, right? Like, the time to garner all those wins was early in the season because the schedule doesn't do them any favors the rest of the way.
Yeah. Do you want to give us some Twins scoopage here?
Reckless.
What are you hearing? So give us. What are you hearing? I know you guys have talked about this on Tuesdays too, but what are you hearing about Carlos Correa? Have the Twins? What kind of offers are they talking about? What else are the Twins up to here behind the scenes besides putting Joe Polat in charge?
Yeah, well, winter meetings begin on Sunday, so look for activity at least publicly to ramp up big time Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday from San Diego. But yeah, I mean, Carlos Correa is priority 1, and it's not close. Like, I don't sense they're doing a whole lot of other stuff. Yes, they are on the lookout for a catcher. Yes, they've had dialogue with other teams about trading for a catcher. They've touched base on some free agents, although no on Wilson Contreras, no so far on Tucker Barnhart. Now, it's fluid. Things change very rapidly, right? But to date, the Twins have not reached out on 2 pretty good free agent catchers. It's all about Correa. Now, they have planted seeds on Xander Bogaerts and on Dansby Swanson. They need to have some sort of contingency plan, but they want Correa back badly. I saw that ESPN, Jeff Passan, hopped in on what we've talked about for weeks, that the Twins are making a strong push. I saw the aggregators had some fun with that because, hey, he's got a loud national voice, but this is something we've talked about for weeks. The Twins have been making a very strong push to re-sign Carlos Correa. They are open-minded to multiple player options. So if it's an 8 or 9 year deal, player option after year 4, maybe after year 6, or maybe it's after year 7, but multiple player options, full no trade. So the Twins are open-minded on those fronts. They're open-minded on term, 6 years, 7 years, 8 years, 9 years, even 10 years. The Twins are very open-minded. They're not going to do some sort of short-term deal again with, a player option after the 23 season. Nothing crazy like that again. But I'm just saying the Twins are trying to be as open-minded as possible because the reality, Phil, is, in all likelihood, the Twins are not going to make him the biggest money offer.
Yeah.
That is going to come from the Giants or the Cubs, maybe the Yankees or the Dodgers, right? If Trey Turner ends up with the Phillies, what do the Dodgers do? Now, they could just pivot internally, move Gavin Lux to shortstop, do something like that, move Mookie Betts to second base, go sign an outfielder, something like that if they wanted to. But, the point is the Dodgers have money, right? So, like, I don't foresee the Twins making the richest offer to Correa, but they are going to make him, if they haven't already, Phil, I wouldn't be shocked if they've already done it, made him a very rich offer.
Dukes, what's the plan for the bullpen, given the trouble that this team had? And I don't think they're going to alter their philosophy of starters, coming out what we feel is probably too soon at times. Are they actively trying to pursue improvement there? Because, to me, that becomes absolutely paramount that they don't run the same type of bullpen out there that they did in 2021.
Well, I'll just tell you, Judd, I've checked on a few of the high-profile relievers, and there's no buzz right now. And again, maybe the Twins were waiting for the winter meetings. Hey, first time since 2019 winter meetings. We'll see every agent. Now, they saw a lot of the agents at the GM meetings a few weeks ago, but maybe a few more agents will be at the winter meetings. Hey, let's have that face-to-face dialogue as opposed to over the cell phone. But just so far, there just isn't, Judd. And I've checked on some starting pitchers. I'd love to see the Twins pursue Chris Bassett. I'm a Chris Bassett fan. Maybe the Twins prefer a lefty. Yes, they made a nice offer to Carlos Rodon last year. Not as much as the Giants, but clearly Carlos Rodon is on the Twins' radar based on what took place last March. And maybe it's a different lefty, although nothing going on with Jose Quintana. And we can debate whether Quintana's any good, but he's a free agent lefty out there. So I've checked on some of these guys. Nothing. Crickets. Maybe eventually it could change, but nothing. It seems like 99.9% of the focus is on, hey, can we find a solution to re-signing Carlos Correa? Then we'll go from there. While simultaneously catcher. That's the one other area. I can see them making a move on a catcher here in the next 7 to 10 days.
Well, so it's a Scott Boras client here, Carlos Correa. So isn't it likely that he's going to drag this for 2 more months? So are they just going to sit and wait until February 10th?
The comeback to that is, Phil, if you go back to the last winter meetings in 2019, Scott took a few of his high-profile clients off the board. Garrett Cole, Strasburg, he's got so many guys, even guys like Conforto and Cody Bellinger, and obviously Bogarts. You can't keep all these guys on the board until January 30th or February 10th, as you alluded to. At some point, you need to take some of these guys off the board. Now, trust me, the Twins would like to wrap up a deal with Carlos Correa today. They would have loved to have wrapped up a deal with him last week, right? The Twins don't want this thing to drag on for a really long time. And, oh, by the way, Bogarts is plan B. Well, guess what? He's got the same representation. So they're kind of in that sticky wicket. But, yeah, trust me, the Twins are pushing for closure sooner rather than later. But I don't know if it'll be Correa. I'm just saying Scott is going to take some of his clients off the board, before what you alluded to, late January, early February.
Mm-hmm. I do have one more Twins thing, Judd, unless you got it's like you're in chill mode. All right, I've got one more Twins thing.
I'm very good. Yeah.
Okay. So I know Joe Pohlad a little bit just from, covering that beat 8, 9, 10, 12 years ago. And I will say Joe Pohlad is a really, really good human, and he has spent several years essentially prepping to take over the organization. I would say the last 10 to 12 years, and he did run the radio properties for a couple of years, and that really didn't go that well. But Declan got a nice severance out of that, though. So
I got paid to leave. It's all good.
But he's spent time in marketing, and I think he spent time in baseball ops and game day operations and all this stuff, right? So he's a really good human being, and I wish him the best. I wonder how much of a deviation he will be from Jim, who was very much Jim wasn't exactly a force behind the scenes, driving a culture, and he wasn't frontal with the public. He was just kind of I don't know.
Well, I think Joe is going to be more outgoing than Jim. I think Joe is going to be in the office.
What's it going to be like with Joe Pohlad?
Yeah, he's going to be in the office more than Jim. So he'll be omnipresent. Heck, he'll pop into the clubhouse from time to time. He wants to maintain a rock-solid relationship with, Rocco and players. Jim Pohlad wasn't doing that. Do I see some sort of grand philosophical shift in how they, go about signing players? No. And hey, they're going to make Carlos Correa the richest offer in team history, right? It'll trump what they gave Joe Mauer, 8 years, 184. Well, Jim is involved in that. It's not like Jim doesn't have his fingerprints somewhat on a decision like that. I've heard the same things you have, Phil. Now, you know Joe better than I. I did text him trying to get some interview time with him, and I was told we got to push that back a few weeks. So he's not quite ready to do a TV interview, but I look forward to sitting down with him, getting to know him more. But yeah, I mean, those who know him, those who worked under him at the radio station, like Declan, like, our mutual friend Dana Wessel, some others, speak very highly of Joe. But, let's also be frank, Phil. I mean, yes, he was groomed for this position. He's tried to dabble in baseball ops, branding, marketing, all that stuff. You just don't ascend to a position like this at 40 years old without nepotism in play, right?
Oh.
Like it is what it is,
Yes.
right? But hey, it's the elephant in the room. It needs to be addressed, right? Like you don't become executive officer or whatever the official title is at 40 years old if your last name isn't Polak.
Yeah, well, I mean that's
right?
that's how Declan became the executive producer of Score North before the age of 30 because his sports dad is Judd Zolgad.
Yeah,
it's nepotism.
A lot of people want it, and I'm like, no, my sports son's getting it.
Yep.
But hey,
groomed.
Kudos to Joe. I mean, it's more people than I just name that I know that know Joe and say, good dude, right? And, I thought he handled himself well at the fashion show a couple weeks ago at Mall of America. That's when the light bulb really went off. The Twins did call an all-staff meeting a month ago for Tuesday, November 29th. So some light bulbs went off then. But then when Joe was introduced by Dave St. Peter at Mall of America a couple Fridays ago, that's when the light bulbs really went off. I thought, that situation, I don't know how much experience he has addressing 500 to 1,000 people. That can be a nervous situation, right? You're there on stage, all eyeballs on you. It's not like he talked for 5 minutes, but he didn't stumble over his words. He looked comfortable. He handled that situation, I thought, pretty darn well. So, I'll take a wait and see approach. I'm not knocking him, because his last name is what it is, and that's why he's in this position, right? Like, I want to find out, does he really love baseball? We've wondered that about Jim, right? Does Joe really love baseball? And I'd like to find out just, he's going to be there at Target Field a lot, but, how often, right? I mean, is he going to be there 5 days a week? Is he going to sit in on every meeting? So, there's some specific details I'd like to hear. I'd like to hear from Dave St. Peter, team president, CEO, Phil. I get a sense that at times, Dave, when he needed to have Jim at arm's length, he could. How will that dynamic play out, Dave with Joe? So there's still all sorts of questions, but hey, congratulations to Joe, right? I mean, he's been doing stuff since 2007, waiting for this opportunity. Go ahead and run with it.
One last thing here for you guys. As the 2012 Minnesota Sportscaster of the Year, as voted on by the National Sports Media Association as the 2012 Minnesota Sportscaster of the Year. It really saddens me again to see the 2022 finalist list came out, and there's some very respectable names on this list. I did not see Darren Doogie Wolfson. I did not see Declan Goff or Judd Zolgad here. Corey Provis, Dan Barrero from KFXN, Justin Guard from KFXN, Mike Grimm, the Grimmer, voice of the Gophers,
also
Reggie
a former
Wilson.
Winner. Corey Provis, a former winner. Yeah, Reggie doing
Reggie
good work
Wilson
over at KARE 11.
I just want to say, hopefully you guys can someday join the luminaries of Minnesota media, like myself, for instance, and at least become maybe a finalist. I don't expect you guys to win like me, but maybe you can be a finalist at some point.
Yeah, we'll get there. We'll get
It was a tough day yesterday. I'm not going to lie.
Yeah,
I'm not going to lie. I got the
last night,
text from Phil.
Lost all sorts of sleep on that one. So, yeah,
I
don't know how I'm going to move on. But, yeah, one day, Phil, I mean, I'm still young enough, 42 years old, so maybe the day will eventually come.
Oh.
The KFXN dynamic, interesting there. Two guys on the same show. I wonder if that could create a division.
Some infighting there?
I wonder if the wrong person won, if that could create some division. A schism, as we like to call it.
Maybe that's why
in the
me and you were
business.
neglected, Judd. Maybe that's exactly they
They didn't want to pit us
It's a
against each other.
3-man show. We don't want 66% of the show fighting against each other for the wrong reasons. That's probably why we were.
It's like when Randy Orton won the WWE Championship at age
Yeah, with
24.
Evolution.
Triple H got jealous, and then it blew up the whole faction. You never know.
Well, and then
with this
imagine
thing.
if Judd won it. Like the ego in play, like Phil.
Yes.
Like,
oh God.
I typically think of your show being the Mackey and Judd show. Your
Yeah.
name comes first.
Very much capital
Yeah.
Mackey.
What if
and then
Judd wins
I
the
just will
award?
Judd, yeah.
Imagine the ego in play. Like, there's no way he would accept
Oh.
his name being second in the title of the show.
Well, and if Declan won it,
Yeah.
all hell would break
If
loose.
I won it, we are officially adding Mackey and Judd with Declan then to the name if the award was given.
No, if
Oh,
you
I would
wanted
say
it, would be
Declan
Declan with Mackey and Judd.
Actually, a funny story. So our guy, Rami Makloff used to be with us at Score until the pandemic and a bunch of things happened. But it was Mackey and Judd with Rami, and we did the afternoons live on the radio. And Rami I was texting with Rami last night. He's one of my favorites, but when he jumped on board. So we're gonna add a third person to our afternoon show, and then we'll all be doing other stuff too, and we're gonna call it Mackey and Judd because we've had that brand for 7 years with Rami. And he did ask me. He goes, "Is there any chance it could just be Mackey, Judd, and Rami?" And it was like a 2-day kind of like.
Wow, I never
I
knew
don't know.
this.
I don't think I never
about
told you
schism.
this.
Yeah, I knew about this.
So,
Oh,
Mackey
wow.
and Judd is a brand, and Rami is a lot different than with Rami. It's very
So
very
right now-
subtle, but
Right now, it's Towns, Gobert with Ant, and
we
that's
need it to be yes.
Yeah.
and that's creating the problem. Figured it out.
Ism.
Yes. All right, Dukes.
You
Thanks
want me to
for
empty out my figurative notebook real quick?
if you've got stuff. Go ahead.
Reckless speculation.
The Timberwolves had scouts this week at the Marquette-Baylor game, the North Carolina-Indiana game. There's a national report tying the Wolves to Jay Crowder of Phoenix. Here's what I would say to that, because I checked with somebody whose team was also attached to Jay Crowder. It's about that time of the year where teams are just calling each other, just getting a gauge. So, yes, do I sense the Wolves have had dialogue with Phoenix? I do. Do I sense the Wolves are making any sort of strong push for Jay Crowder? I do not, but I'll continue to track that situation. PJ Fleck earned a $100,000 bonus for getting the 8 wins, the win over Wisconsin on Saturday. Don't be surprised, now maybe not in the next week or two, but before next season, if PJ Fleck signs yet another extension and gets another raise. It's the cost of doing business. He signed an extension 1 year ago. When he signed it at the time, he was tied for 5th highest coach in the conference. Since then, Kirk Ferentz, new deal in Iowa. Matt Rule gets a big deal in Lincoln, Nebraska. Luke Fickell gets a big deal in Madison, Wisconsin. And Brett Bielema is going to get a new deal in Champaign, in all likelihood at Illinois. And Jeff Brom, Purdue, is playing for a Big Ten championship this weekend. So don't be surprised if Purdue does some stuff with Jeff Brom's contract. So point is, at some point here, PJ Fleck might be 9th, 10th, or 11th in the conference in terms of annual salary. He's probably earned the right to be higher than that. So I'm just saying, don't be shocked if his agent Brian Harlan approaches Mark Coyle at some point here before the start of next season and says, my client needs a new deal. So just something to keep an eye on down the road.
Great stuff, Doogie. Love having Doogie a couple times a week here.
No dissension here.
Mackey and Judd. No, not yet.
No infighting here. Now
Not
get off
yet.
my channel.
All right, Dukes. We'll see you next week, man.
See you,
All right,
Darren.
sounds good, boys. See ya.
Darren Doogie Wolfson here. Well, let's just transition right